We can start right now.
Yes.
Good morning to all. Good morning to all. I welcome you on behalf of Madras Tax Bar for our 139th webinar this Sunday morning. So today, another young esteemed speaker, Mr. Chandrasekhar Bharati, has chosen to speak on elements of fraud and its legal repercussions. Another very interesting topic in our webinar series. So this morning we also witnessed the wedding of Satish Sundar sir's daughter, Amrita. We on behalf of Madras Tax Bar wish the couple a very happy married life. So so we will have the interactive session once Bharati finished with this talk on the topic. So I again welcome everyone on behalf of Madras Tax Bar to this session. We look forward in hearing from Bharti. Over to you, Bharti.
Thank you so much, Prithvi. First, let me begin by thanking MTB again, once again, because the last opportunity that I had gave me immense amount of confidence to take up public speaking, because immediately, shortly, Shastra gave me an opportunity to handle jurisprudence course for the 5th semester students. And it was that webinar opportunity that MTB gave me that boosted the confidence in me to speak regularly. So thank you very much to MTB. And a very warm welcome to other senior and junior members of the bar. The topic that I have chosen today to speak on is fraud and its repercussions. Now, this will not be a general discussion on fraud, but the context in which we will be discussing it today will be in light of the famous Devas and Antrix case. The NCLT recently on the 25th of May, through its final judgment, wound up this company, Bangalore-based company called Devas Multimedia, on the grounds that it was incorporated for fraudulent purposes and it continued to perpetuate fraud throughout its existence, and therefore deserves to be wound up under 271C of the Companies Act. Now, it is in this context of this case that we will be discussing today's talk. Now, there are two aspects in which we can deal this discussion. Let me first present this audience with the general facts that has to be had in mind to proceed further to the nitty-gritties of the allegations of fraud. This general layout will serve the purpose of understanding the latter half of the talk in a better way. Now, moving on to the first aspect, that is the general layout. Now, this is how the transaction flowed. In 2005, exact date is January 28th, 2005, Antrix, which is the commercial arm of the Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, it entered into an agreement with this Bangalore-based company called Devas. Now, from Devas's end, it promised one thing, that it would be delivering a very innovative and a very new service unheard of in the world. For the first time, it would deliver a service and called it as Devas Services. Now, please park this term in your mind. It would be very relevant in the latter half of this discussion. So Devas offered to deliver Devas services in India. This services was not available in India at any point of time, nor in the world. It was the first kind of innovative service. Now, from Antrix's end, it promised Devas to enable you to deliver Devas services. I will give you 2 satellites. Now, along with these satellites, the segment, the space segment that is available in the S-band spectrum frequency range will also be given to you entirely. So Antrix said 2 satellites and the entire segment that comes along with it in the S-band will be given to you so that you can deliver Devas services in India. Now, an amount of 58 crores was initially paid as consideration for this transaction by Devas to Antrix. Now, this is the underlying terms of the agreement. We will get into the nitty-gritty a little later. Now, this was in 2005. 6 years later, in 2011, this contract was terminated by the government of India and especially Antrix on the grounds of force majeure for unforeseen reasons. Now, immediately, Devas invoked the arbitration clause and approached the ICC Arbitral Tribunal. This tribunal heard the matter and passed an award in favor of Devas in the year 2015. Now, this was something close to 10,000 crores with interest. Devas had 5 investors in their company. These investors also initiated bilateral investment treaty arbitration, BIT arbitrations against the government of India. Now, they also obtained awards in their favor against the government of India. And to put together, the entire award against Antrix and the government of India came up to a sum of 15,000 crores with interest as on today. Now, shortly, this was all sometime in 2015, 2016. Immediately after this happened, the CBI started looking into the matter. And immediately after the matter was taken up for investigation, CBI found out serious aspects of fraud, not just spanning to one transaction, but a series of frauds prior to the agreement in 2005, from 2005 to 2011, from 2011 to 2016. It gave statistics after statistics and documents after documents to suggest that this is a serious case of fraud. This happened in 2016, and they filed their first charge sheet against 9 accused. Now, this was not just against the company. They found out that officials who worked in the government departments, for example, ISRO, Department of Space, they were all hand in glove with this company and enabled them to commit the fraud. Now, immediately after the CBI investigated into the matter, ED took the lead. The Enforcement Directorate took the lead. They found out a serious case of money laundering charges. And whatever amount that was left in India, ED seized it immediately to an amount of 79 crores is seized as on today. Now, immediately thereafter, the FEMA authorities took the lead from ED and CBI and found out serious share pricing violations, serious investment diversions outside India. Now, FEMA started initiating proceedings. Those are also pending as on date. So several agencies are after this company. One among the many cases that they faced was the winding up proceedings before the NCLT. Now, with this factual background, I will now proceed to list out the fraudulent allegations that were leveled against Devas in the NCLT. And instead of bombarding this audience with a lot of facts, what I had in mind was I will frame propositions of law under which these facts can be fit in. So I will now proceed to do that. The first proposition of law is, see, whenever someone wants to engage in some kind of services in India, they want to perform a service, render a service, that service should be recognized as a policy. That policy document should permit the service provider to move forward and render his service. This is the underlying understanding in the Indian jurisprudence. Now, it is time to recollect that term that we had parked in our minds, which is Devas services. Now, Devas under the agreement promised to deliver the service called Devas services. Now, what was this service? That's the obvious question one needs to ask. Devas services, according to them, under the agreement, they promised ours is a very unique, ours is a very innovative service. It has an element of broadcasting in it. It has an element of telecommunication in it. It has multimedia interactive services in it. And I will combine all these independent services into one bouquet and deliver it to my user. This was Devas services, even according to the company. Now, the second aspect is, how did Devas promise that they will deliver this service? They promised that, see, these services can be delivered via satellite mode. My services can be received directly from a satellite. And wherever satellites are not able to deliver due to network issues, I will install towers. Those towers will get in touch with my satellites. The towers will then transmit the signals from satellites. So Devas said, Mine was a hybrid model. It can get in touch with both satellites and terrestrial modes of transmission. Now, immediately, everybody might think that, okay, what is so new about it? It is very, very similar to our Tata Sky, our Airtel DTH. It is not the case. Our Tata Sky and our DTH, they are completely broadcasting services, purely broadcasting. They are an independent broadcasting service alone. On the other hand, our mobile phones, our network connections, they are purely telecommunication services. Now, if someone wished to move forward and deliver broadcasting services, they have to approach the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting for an operating license. Similarly, if someone wished to render telecommunication services, they had to move forward and approach and obtain an operating license from the Department of Telecommunications. Now, in 2005, when this agreement was entered into between the parties, broadcasting services existed independently, telecommunication services existed independently. This combination of both, inclusive of several other services called as Devas services, could not have been delivered in India. So this was the first allegation that was leveled against Devas. You entered into an agreement that you could not have delivered your services because there is no underlying policy in India. Therefore, contemplating such a service which was not backed up by a policy in India was a fraudulent intention. Therefore, your formation was fraudulent. This was the first allegation that was leveled against Devas. Now, the second aspect of this same services was Devas promised a very peculiar aspect for a user. It said, my user of my service, a person sitting in India is receiving my service. How will he receive it? Devas said, look, I will give you a device. This device is not just in your home in front of your TV. You can have this device installed anywhere and everywhere. You can have it in your vehicles. You can have it in your mobile phones. You can have it wherever in any kind of device. You can just enjoy Devas services anywhere and everywhere in India. This is the kind of promises that were made under the agreement. Now, again, the first question that was asked regarding this aspect was, as on date when you entered into the agreement in 2005, did you have the technology? Devas immediately said before the NCLT, no, we did not have the technology in 2005. We were only going to develop it later. All right. The next question that was then asked is, between 2005 and 2011, did Devas deliver or develop any technology that was capable of delivering these services? No, when you develop such a robust system, it should be obviously backed up by documents. No, that was also asked from Devas. Please show us one document that you can say that you had developed this technology. Because all along, even before the arbitration that Devas won, it was their case that they had everything ready from their end. They had everything ready. They built the technology. It was ready to be launched, but Anthrix failed to give them the satellite. Therefore, they were facing losses. So the obvious question that we had asked was, please show us a document that you had to say that you had the technology with you. Devas could not produce any. So the second allegation that was leveled against Devas in this aspect was you contemplated a service which you could not have rendered. You did not have the technology which you promised you had or would be developing, and neither did so. Therefore, contemplating these aspects, it was fraudulent on your part to do so. Now, moving on to my next proposition of law. See, if you obtain any permission from any governmental authority or any clearance or any sort of approval, it has to be moved in a file. That's how governments work. Now, these governments will have their own notings. Every department will clear it. It will pass on from official to higher official. Finally, the secretary will sign it. This is the procedure contemplated by the law, by the administrative hierarchy. Now, at any point of time, if these approvals and suppressions are obtained out of suppression of facts or passing on untrue information, then the entire permission and clearance is vitiated by fraud. Now, similarly in Devas, they had obtained a couple of clearances. So it was the case of Anthrax that all these clearances that you had obtained were a result of suppression of material facts, and therefore all the approvals were fraudulent. Now, what were these approvals? The first aspect that we have to bear in mind is the satellite communication policy of 2000. Now, this policy was an A to Z. It was a 101 of anything to do with satellites. Anything in India, if someone wanted to render any kind of service having satellites in mind, they had to adhere to the norms and guidelines listed under the SATCOM policy. Now, one among the many guidelines was it listed a step-by-step procedure. This SATCOM policy listed a step-by-step procedure that is to be followed by a person wishing to lease a space segment, which was what Devas did. Now, one among the preconditions for leasing the segment was you must have an operating license with you. So therefore, a question was posed. See, the SATCOM policy is requesting from you an operating license even before you can lease a segment. So where was your operating license? Devas did not have any. The second aspect was it authorized only the Department of Space to allocate the segment, whereas in this case, it was Anthrax who allocated the segment. Therefore, the next allegation that was leveled against Devas was there was a serious violation of the SATCOM policy. Now, for which Devas answered that SATCOM policy will not apply to me because it was the responsibility of Anthrax to give me the satellites. So anything to do with satellites had to be with Anthrax and not Devas. Now, the NCLT did not agree with this. The next aspect was, under the SATCOM policy, it was not just the Department of Space that were involved. It contemplated 7 other ministries under the Government of India to grant clearances to a user. Now, these 7 ministries were not independent application of mind procedures. They had to sit together, review an application together, and grant a single window clearance to a user wishing to lease space segment. So the next question that was posed was, see, this SATCOM policy lists out seven ministries to clear your project. Now, where was documentation regarding your approaching the SATCOM policy and the 7 ministries, and where was your single window clearance? Devas did not have an answer. So the next allegation was even this aspect was violated intentionally by you. You surpassed the SATCOM policy entirely in getting your approvals. The next aspect of suppression comes from Anthrax's end, or the Department of Space. The then officials who worked for Department of Space, who were hand in glove with Devas, they were part of this. The next aspect was, see, whenever it is the government protocol that whenever satellites are approved for build or it's getting approved, it's going for launch, then the Union Cabinet approves the process. That is the procedure contemplated by the Union Cabinet. So similarly, under this agreement, Anthrax had promised 2 satellites to Devas. Naturally, under government procedure, they had to be cleared by the Union Cabinet. So immediately, the Department of Space, it prepared a cabinet note saying that for so and so reasons, these satellites are now going to be built. Now, the contents of this cabinet note is very interesting. This was prepared in 2006, a year after the agreement was signed with Devas. The cabinet note did not make a mention to Devas, did not make a mention to the agreement in 2005, did not make a mention to the nature of services called Devas services, did not make a mention about the operating license it held. Instead, what it mentioned was there were several firm expressions of interest by commercial operators in India wishing to lease space capacity from these satellites. Therefore, it would be commercially beneficial for India. And therefore, we are now sending this satellites for approval. So in 2005, when the entire satellite was already given to Devas, in 2006, the Department of Space represents before the Union Cabinet and says there were several people waiting to lease the capacity. Therefore, the next allegation was there was a misrepresentation even in the cabinet approval. Therefore, the subsequent approval is vitiated by fraud, and therefore this agreement is naturally fraudulent. That was the next level of allegations. Now, shortly after, sometime in 2009, Devas wanted to pursue experimental plan with respect to their project. So they made a presentation before the technical committees under the government of India. Now, this technical committee posed certain very pertinent questions to Devas. They asked, what was the operating license you had with you? We are not satisfied with what you have already. Please give us some technical details, some other particulars of your project. We will then constitute a review committee. This review committee will then further review your project, and then we will see whether we can give you your experimental plan. This was the minutes of that meeting where Devas did the presentation. Now, the then project director of ISRO, who was also part of that meeting, he was in charge of drafting the minutes. He was also hand in glove. He is also one of the accused. He drafted the minutes in such a way that after deliberations, the committee decided to grant experimental license to Devas. So there is experimental license they carried, and they obtained was also obtained out of fraud, and that was the next level of allegations played out against Devas. Now, I will move on to my next proposition of law, which is, see, we are all very aware of it. When we go take a loan from any bank, we need to state the purpose of the loan. And the bank will keep an eye on how the loan is being utilized. Is it towards the set purpose for which it is approved, or is it going elsewhere? Similarly is the case with foreign direct investments. Now, when you invest in a company for a particular purpose, that purpose has to be carried out and the money has to be utilized only for the approved purposes. That is the law. Now, Devas had 5 investors in them. These investors were also the shareholders of Devas. Now, an amount of 579 crores was invested in Devas by these 5 investors, 4 of them from Mauritius, 1 of them from Germany through their subsidiary in Singapore. Now, any investment that is to be brought into the country, it has to have the approval of the FIPB, which is the Foreign Investment Promotion Board. Now, you apply to the FIPB saying for so and so purposes, I want investment into India. So this is a formal application. The FIPB then applies their mind and then grants you the approval or rejects it based on the discussion. Now, in the case of Devas, the contents of the application are very, very pertinent. What Devas stated was, I am asking for 100% FDI into my company for the purposes of delivering internet services in India. They sought for approval from the FIPB for rendering internet services. They wanted to be an ISP. That was the FIPB approval. Now, in that application, this was sometime in 2006 and subsequent approvals at later points of time. They did not mention about the agreement in 2005. They did not mention about their nature of services, which is Devas services. Instead, they mentioned what I wanted to do was ISP services. All right. Next immediate question that was asked to them was, what ISP services did you do in India? For which the CBI gave us an answer. The CBI had found out that this company set up their ISP services in just one locality in Bangalore for about 25 to 30 people. And not even for 6 to 7 months, it was hardly a few months lesser than that. And they made a revenue of 80,000 rupees from these services. So 579 crores were invested into the company and 80,000 rupees were earned as income. And therefore, the allegation that was leveled against Devas was, if you wanted to bring your investment for ISP, you did not use it for ISP. Where did the remaining money go? That's the obvious question everybody had. Now, before going to the particulars, there is a reason why Devas asked for the FIPB approval under the ISP category. Now, in 2006, FIPB released a press statement. It said, one of the clauses stated, if you want to do any investment relating to satellite establishments and operations, which is very particular to Devas, you have to abide by the sectoral guidelines by ISRO, by DOS, Department of Space, and etc. So had Devas applied under that category, then FIPB would have to consult naturally ISRO and DOS regarding that process. That would have obviously revealed that they surpassed every kind of permission they had to obtain. So to skip that scrutiny, Devas obtained FIBB approvals under the ISP category. Now coming to the important question, 579 crores were invested. You earned only 80,000 out of it. Now the curious question is, what happened to these 579 crores? Where did it go? Devas sent out this money in 4 tranches. And these 4 are very, very important to the case. The first tranche is, they said, we want to establish a wholly owned subsidiary in America, in Delaware state. So we are pushing out 75 crores towards share subscription. Now, the same directors who were in India were the directors in the subsidiary company. 75 crores were pushed out from India to USA towards incorporation and share subscription of that subsidiary company. The next intention, Devas said, no, we are doing a lot of business in India. We need support services from USA. Therefore, 180 crores, they pushed out from the Indian company to the US company and said, this is towards business support services. The next question that we asked was, business support services requires 2 aspects. One, there must be a business, then there must be a corresponding support to it. Now, where was your business? Evidence records that you had performed this only for a few months, your ISP. Now, where was the need for you to push 180 crores? The second aspect that was questioned was, when you say you have pushed out 180, where is the substantial benefit you received in India? There was nothing material. In fact, an inspection into the books of records wrote all these transactions as losses in their books. 180 crores were sent out and were written off as losses. The next tranche that they did was 233 crores were pushed out of India. Now, the reason being, ICC arbitration had to be defended, and Devas openly conceded before the NCLT that they had pushed all these monies out of India. Now, they said our contract was terminated. We had to face damages. Now, we had to fight our case, and foreign lawyers are very expensive. Therefore, 233 crores we sent out to obtain this award in 2015. So 90% of the money that was invested in Devas were taken out of Devas into the American subsidiary and other purposes and was never utilized towards rendering ISP services. What happened to the remaining money? Devas had about 79 crores in India that was seized by the PNL authorities, and it stands seized even today. And the remaining 12 crores or something was spent as salaries for its own directors sitting here and in America, who were the same persons. Now, this was the next level of allegation, that there was a serious diversion of funds and therefore you never performed anything towards. So NCLT asked a question that, look at who has signed this agreement on behalf of Devas. For Anthrix, the managing director has signed it. But on behalf of Devas, there was a guy who was nowhere connected to the business of Devas, was nowhere connected to any operation of Devas, was a student, in fact, did not even have a proper degree. He had signed it on behalf of Devas. And he had received a token amount from Devas' authorities for enabling him to sign it. So the second aspect that the NCLT noted was, the contract was in 2005. This company was incorporated in December 2004, just 45 days prior, with no expertise, no transparent procedures being followed. So we are very convinced that this company is incorporated out of fraud and it was perpetuating fraud. Now, the NCLT took up a public interest angle also in this judgment of its, which is also very important. Now, Devas and its investors had obtained awards summing up to a huge amount of crores against Anthrix and the government of India. Now, the NCLT said, if you're such a fraudulent company and you're enforcing these awards, I don't think we will permit you to do that, because it is against our public interest, having a huge impact on a public exchequer. Therefore, it is just inequitable to wind you up. The next aspect that the NCLT said was, look at your own books of records. For the past 4 years, your income is less than 2 lakh rupees put together in the past 4 years. Therefore, we find no reason to hold you in the registrar of companies record in Bangalore. Therefore, we are winding you up as a fraudulent company. This was the finding of the NCLT. Now, with this aspect, I will spend the next 5 to 7 minutes on fraud and its repercussions through various judgments that are relevant to this discussion. The first case that comes to anyone's mind, especially when the subject matter is spectrum and satellites, is the Center for Public Interest Litigations case, which is a very, very important. This was also argued before the NCLT. It said this judgment, Center for Public, in 2012 Supreme Court judgment, it stated, first thing it declared, spectrum to be a natural resource. This natural resource was scarce and renewable and has to be utilized in a very, very secure way. It is a public resource. And it evolved and redefined and gave a new dimension to the public trust doctrine. It says whenever there are existing natural resources, it is not actually any one particular government's. It is the public's resource. It is for the people of India's resource. And the government held it in trust of the people. So the government held the resources for the people of India. Therefore, when such is the case, when that is being given as largest, state largest, and through contracts to certain parties, it has to follow certain guidelines and procedures, and these procedures have to be transparent. 2012 Supreme Court says these procedures have to be transparent, and if it is not so, then the Article 14 scrutiny will be much higher compared to any other case. Now, applying that to Devas's case, since they did not follow any procedure, this was argued that they had violated, and this is directly covered by the Center for Public Interest Litigations case. Now, other aspects of fraud is, this Venture Global case is also equally important. It actually discusses the degree of proof when it comes to fraudulent actions. The settled proposition of law with respect to fraud, it's fraud vitiates everything. Any fraudulent action vitiates even the most solemn proceedings, and anything obtained out of fraud is vitiated when and if found even at a later point of time. Venture Global says fraud is proved when misrepresentation is apparent on the record. Fraud is proved when someone knows something is true and passes the information as untrue, or the vice versa. So it talks about the degree of proof with respect to fraud. In Surya Chandra Rao case, it says when you gain something out of fraudulent actions, such gain is not an apparent gain. It's a gain out of fraud, and therefore that gain will be, you will be deprived of that gain. The next aspect of fraud with respect to, there was one interesting case, which is probably very relevant to our tax cases also, that fraud on the statute. When you render several devices, colorable devices, to cheat the statute, then such is the fraud on the statute. Those court will step in and take out all these series of transactions and look into the fraudulent action. That is fraud on the statute. The other most and the last important aspect of fraud is, it is fraud on the court. Obtaining an award, obtaining an order, any judicial order by suppression of facts, arguing facts that are not true, misrepresentation, such proceedings and such judicial order is also vitiated by fraud. So therefore, the point to be understood is fraud may give huge amount of success and gain, but if
a wedding gift.
Satya, can you please mute? So any amount of gain that fraud gives you, it will be deprived by the court if and when found and brought to its attention. And the lesson that I learned through this working on this case is, we as youngsters must definitely refrain from indulging in any fraudulent actions, because it might give immediate success, but it strips you off immediately when it comes to an attention of someone very important. So with that, I thank MTB again for this opportunity. I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bharti. It was a very, very clear discussion on the topic. The way you have described how the element of fraud has affected in the Devas case It has made a lot of things very clear. So now the floor is open to all. If anyone wants to add on, or if anyone has any points to ask, or if there's any doubts, you can please come forward and ask the questions to Bharti.
Whether there was any due diligence at that point of time before going to NCLAT? So you said that the contract was signed by the chartered accountant. So no one have done any due diligence?
So from our understanding, no, sir. No authority was even aware of this agreement.
Because when
in fact, sir, let me clarify that aspect also, because in 2011, when this contract was terminated, sir, they sought opinions from several departments in the government of India. So all these departments wrote to the authorities seeking for termination that this agreement skipped so-and-so steps, so-and-so steps, so-and-so steps. So in 2011 only, it was brought to the attention of the terminating authorities that these procedures were skipped. So at the time of signing, nobody was aware, absolutely none, and that is apparent on the record, actually.
Thank you.
One supplementary question, basic doubt, don't think otherwise. You had said that it is signed by some office, chartered accountant's office and all that. Who moved the NCLT for
winding up the company, sir?
Company, and why the registrar firm, why he could not take suo motu action to delist the company?
Sir, it was Anthrix which moved the petition before the NCLT to wind the company up. And the winding up procedure, which is 271C, allows only 2 people to move forward to file that application. And the registrar of companies was not one among them. Okay. So it was for that purpose that Anthrix had moved it. The registrar was not having the power to move that application before the NCLT.
No, but he does not have any suo motu powers in such cases under the company law.
So he has the power to wind the company up, but on the grounds of fraud, he cannot under 271C.
No, I'm not saying winding up, delisting the company, completely wiping it off its status.
That is what it has done now, sir, in the direction of the NCLT. Now the registrar has delisted the company on the directions of the NCLT.
Good subject.
Thank you, sir.
But very puzzling that so much of serious fraud has been committed and nobody had looked into it. What happened to the government of India money? They could recover that.
Sir, it's all under pending litigation, sir. Nothing is final as of now.
It will never come. The day will never come. Public money will be gone.
And the NCLT is actually I think the appeal is also, they have filed an appeal and it's shortly being listed. I'm not sure when. That's also coming up.
Nice to know that there are advocates to defend such companies also.
Bharti, this is Natarajan here. There is a power blockout in my place, so I'm not able to open the video.
No problem.
It was like a space odyssey. You have taken us through a space odyssey. And after listening to you for some time, it creates a lot of fears in our mind. What is going on? What is going on in our country? What is happening? And if such an outright thing can happen without the knowledge of anybody for so many years, where are we living? Where are we heading? So that is the fear that is coming to our mind. But unfortunately, the other crimes, the normal or conventional crimes, like under the IPC or the POCSO and all, those kind of offenses are getting a lot of publicity in the media, whether it is newspaper or TV or whatever it is. But more serious, I'm not undermining the other crimes or little crimes. They are also serious crimes. At the same time, when these type of activities are happening, the public is not at all aware of it. But for your session today, it was a small item in the newspaper. There was Anthrix, NCLT has ordered for winding up. That's all. We all read it and passed it over. But the big dimension behind it, the enormity of the fraud behind it, all these things we are able to know only now. But unfortunately, the general public may not be able to get all this information. So something has to be done. So maybe through these sessions, through these kind of sessions, more awareness can be created. So my only question, rather in this regard, is One part of it is the winding up proceedings. Definitely, it is not the end of the road. They will take it up to the appellate tribunal and even up to Supreme Court. That is one part of it. Second, the other part of the investigations which are conducted by CBI or Enforcement Directorate, what is the stage of those things? Where do they lie? Is there any?
There are 9 accused before the CBI, sir. So they are pending trial. I think it is in the stage of framing of charges only now. And with respect to the Enforcement Directorate, again, the amounts that are available in India are already seized. And again, trial with respect to money laundering charges and prevention of corruption is again pending trial, sir. It's not concluded. And the FEMA proceedings for share violations and diversion of investments, on the grounds of alternative remedy, it is now pending before the Supreme Court.
Krishna, you wanted to say something? Yes.
Yeah. Can you tell me if any politician is there in this list of 9 people?
Exactly, I wanted to ask that.
If not, why? It's basically,
from my.
I'll 1 minute. Let me complete my question.
From my understanding, no, sir. Sorry.
The question arises out of a simple reason that Antrik Devas was approved by the cabinet committee. They were aware of what was the dealing. So therefore, if the cabinet committee has given an approval to such a kind of a deal, knowing fully well what the consequences could be, why didn't the CBI look into the role of the cabinet committee itself, having given an approval for such a fraudulent deal?
Krishna, do you know the system in India?
No, sir. See, the point is this, that today we are now seeing paeans about ISRO. And, we are saying that we are earning money out of ISRO. Why did we invest so much money in ISRO? Today, they say all the money we invested on ISRO is now resulting in money is coming into India because people are using ISRO. Now, this was a technology, again, which ISRO tried to give Antrik Devas, which was approved by the ministry or the cabinet committee. And it was then that the company was formed. So, obviously, they are finding scapegoats in mere bureaucrats and leaving alone the politicians.
So, yes, sir. Thank you. Sir, from my understanding, sir, at least from what from my limited participation before the proceedings, from what we gather is, so when at the time of signing this agreement, sir, the cabinet was not involved in it. The cabinet came into existence only when the deal was scrapped off in 2011. So it was the cabinet committee on security which scrapped the agreement, which suggested terminating this. But in
if I may interrupt. I don't think that Antrik Devas deal could have been signed without the approval of the cabinet committee on security.
Which is I think precisely our argument.
Pardon?
Which is I think precisely our argument, sir.
Beg your pardon?
Sir, that is what I was saying, that they ought to have been informed, but the fact that they are not informed is fraudulent by itself. This is actually our argument, maybe.
Argument on behalf of Antrik Devas or the government?
On behalf of Antrik.
Hey, Krishna, Prithvi, can I just interrupt for a minute?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Please, sir.
Just to address Krishna.
Sure.
Krishna, I think it's a very relevant question. The answer is in 3 parts.
Sir.
What happened? The company was formed in January 2005, at which point of time nobody was involved, including the cabinet. Then, post the formation, there were 3 resolutions. One by the Space Commission and one by the ISRO, and which prepared along with DOS the final minutes to the cabinet for approval. In all these 3, after forming the company, all these 3 documents do not refer about this company at all.
Oh.
And they went about saying, we wanted satellites for multifarious users. There are several stakeholders who are desirous of using it. No names are mentioned. And therefore, when the final cabinet approval was given in, say, December 2005, cabinet was led to believe at that point of time that there are multiple stakeholders, no names were furnished. And therefore, this is going to give us some commercial benefit. And therefore, let us invest our money to derive commercial benefit. That is how the resolution got passed. As a matter of fact, behind it, inside it, all that will go later. I just want to seek give you a clarification on facts alone, Krishna. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
Senior,
I got it.
Senior sir, only one question. Whatever he say on document, right? But such a serious fraud without conspiracy, without the approval of the top person in the government, I don't think anybody would venture into it also.
I mean, the scope of the litigation today is our first primary concern is to ensure that these awards which are obtained out of fraud gets nullified because the volume is so high. And the first stage we have reached is succeeding before the NCLT. Of course, they are an appeal in NCLAT. But we'll have to, the rest of the things will have to follow over a period of time. And this is our immediate priority and the government's priority also from what... okay, back to Balaji. Sorry, Balaji, I interrupted for 2 minutes. Sorry.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
See, one more comment I want to make. If this company could litigate like this, what is the judicial system we got to correct all this within time is a very essential matter in this. If
I think
the
NCLT has now stepped in, so we can only expect more such orders in the future, in the coming months. This is the first order that's, in fact, sir, they in the midst of the NCLT proceedings, so they went and approached the High Court of Karnataka. They challenged the proceedings. Constitutional validity was challenged, and in fact, sir, for abuse of process of law, the Karnataka High Court also came down heavily on them and awarded a cost of 5 lakhs for filing the petition. So I think courts are now coming up, sir, and we can expect some relief, say, in the coming future.
My view is government should take something and deprive them of any legal right. Straight away one court and finish it off. Take it to the Supreme Court and finish it off. This is too much. As a common man, I am talking, not as a lawyer or anything.
I understand.
Okay, can I raise a question?
Yes, sir, please. Yes, Sudarshan. Hi, how are you?
Good, Balaji. Thank you. Balaji, I have 3 questions.
Yeah.
One, of course, I've been doing few BIT arbitrations largely on the tax matter, so it's coming from the BIT side. One of the reasons why we are struggling with the BIT award is the corruption allegations was filed after the arbitration award was done. Why was this, if you have some insights? My second question is coming to the BIT side. Do you see another BIT application going in on 2 grounds? One, White Industries precedents for not able to enforce the award. I see a potential BIT, another BIT coming up. 2, the corruption arbitration amendment, which happened a couple of years last year, was a retrospective. So now with what's happening with the cane and all those things, so I see another issue in terms of, again, being retrospective. And now this ANC Act cannot be invoked, largely because this is a retrospective from the Act was introduced, largely to counter the Antrix Devas amendment was done. So what are your reflections on this?
Before Bharti could answer that, if there are any questions on these lines, if anything more is to be added on these questions, you can please add it now.
Sure.
Yes, Bharti, you can please continue. Sorry for
that. Sure. So see, primarily, I think the answer to the first question will maybe reflect on the others also. So the thing is, with respect to this, I mean, my knowledge doesn't expand very much into cane or other sorts of BITs, but with respect to Antrix and Devas, see, what happened was, it was until the CBI stepped in say 2016, the entire country was in the dark with respect to whatever I had stated in the first part of my talk. Absolutely nothing emerged. None of them were even aware of it. It was only after them, they filed their first charge sheet, and that charge sheet was something around 18,000 pages with annexures. I think that's the base document. So that revealed it. So when that happens, I think there are legal provisions to say that, then obviously if these were not brought to the attention of the BIT tribunal, obviously it couldn't have been argued there. I think there are international conventions, or at least local international laws in other jurisdictions outside India, where it says that when fraud emerged after the order is passed, then it can be filed through an application before the court which passed the award, and a matter can be relitigated. I think with respect to civil frauds, I think the jurisdiction is say 7 years. If it's criminal fraud, there is no limitation. So even if it's found at a later point of time, I think it doesn't deprive of someone who unearthed it at a later point of time to relitigate the issue and get a favorable order, maybe.
The only problem here I see is because both the Hague as well as the Swiss Supreme Court both have denied, saying we're not going to enforce it, largely because it's only an allegation. So by the time this goes up to the Supreme Court and we get it, I'm sure we'll cross all the time limit, which is exactly what happened in the BIT also. We have crossed the time limit restriction. And what was so intriguing for me is, sorry, Balaji, July the award was passed, and December the CBI allegations came about. So this was what very intriguing. It's not July 2016 and then we are filing it in December 2018 or 2019. I understand. But the gap of few months raises some sort of, whatever Dr. SK was raising and other things. So this is what was intriguing for me.
So the obvious thing is, when there are two categories of, say, raising allegations. One may be purely to get against the company to prevent them from doing anything that they can do under law. But the other aspect is that this allegation particularly, it unearthed so much and the documents are so real and apparent that actually there can be a case that can be put up. So probably we are racing against time is one aspect to think about it, but actually to fight it, in fact, it's worth fighting it maybe is another school of thought that actually, even though however long it takes, this case might be different from the other cases you cited because there can actually be substance here. And in fact, the case can be put up to defend this company, Anthrix, and get a favorable order, even for the government of India, maybe. So it is not as if the CBI came up and just to go against the company found certain details. In fact, whatever they took was so real, it is so shocking and so revealing that there can actually be a fair case to fight here.
This is exactly what concerns me, because when it's a genuine fraud case, and on the one hand, we're going to have a BIT award of 10,000 crores going against India. It's a double whammy of all sorts.
That's. I mean, we are aware. Actually, that I must admit that having that concern in mind is actually probably the reason why NCLT went forward at a super speed, and we were very committed to the litigation. In fact, matters were argued for more than, I think, 8 sittings on a back-to-back hearing. So instead of taking adjournments, we insisted that 8 hearings go together. So.
Thanks, Balaji.
There was another question, I believe from Mr. He's not here. I think Shiva Shankar also wanted to ask something, but then I guess he's not in the meeting now.
Okay.
Any further questions? I think we've had. Yes, please. Yes, hello.
Yes, sir.
Prithvi?
Yes, sir.
Balaji, where do you think this is going to end?
Sir, undoubtedly the Supreme Court, sir.
And what is going to happen to...
Krishnan, sir, I think your audio is disrupting, sir. We didn't hear you fully.
No, where is it going to end, and what is going to happen to Madhavan Nair and gang?
Sir, absolutely, sir. I can't comment on it. So hopefully the CBI proceedings take its shape and something justice happens. I can only say that. And with respect to this, sir,
you're so forthright, vindictive, and confident that CBI has made a foolproof case.
That's correct. So we can only hope justice is done, sir.
Not like Nami Narayan after so many years. Good, fantastic topic, and very interesting. Very, very well presented.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think Krishnanand, you could compare this to Nami Narayan.
No, sir. See, ultimately, the two things that come together is ISRO. Both are ISRO. Now, again, of course, there the issue was different, but here, committing such a big fraud, and that too at the highest level, is unheard of. And the government being oblivious to all these facts and the fraud being committed is unbelievable. How they slept over it for such a long time.
And as Natarajan said, there is no dissemination of information. Today only we are coming to know.
See, that is why I said, basically it is a high security organization. Now, therefore, information will not be disseminated to public. But at the same time,
After
of
the
this
leak,
cabinet
after the
committee.
leak, newspapers and debates can start. No, that is also not, media is not doing anything.
It seems to be a cover up by the media also. They are picking and choosing what to reveal, what not to reveal. But very interesting topic. A very interesting topic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Krishna, since you have joined a bit late, in the beginning, all the members who have attended today have conveyed their blessings to Satish and his daughter for the wedding.
I joined late because I was at the wedding.
Yeah. Please convey this to Satish also. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. So, Bharti, this was another very, very interesting session by you.
Thank you.
And like the way you handled all the questions which came forward by our seniors was also really very good. And I thank everyone who has contributed in this session. NV sir, Sudarshan sir, Krishan sir, Vishwanathan sir, everyone, and Natarajan sir as well. So, I mean, end of the day, we can only wait for the justice to happen, because this is not a very small issue which could be just done over the time. And the judicial system which we follow in our country, I think will take its own course, and we will definitely be waiting to see some justice prevails on this issue. So thank you very much once again. Thank you all for joining us today on this Sunday. Hope you have a very good day ahead, and please take care of yourselves and stay safe. This session will be uploaded in our YouTube channel. The link will be shared once it is uploaded. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Very well done, Chandrasekhar Bharti. Just not for telling you.